Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Leading Change. My name is Ema Roloff, and I've got Amit with me today, and we're going to be talking about leading change through shifting markets. But before I get into the questions that I've got for you, can you give everybody an introduction?
Sure. Thank you, Emma. Appreciate the opportunity, and it's good to see you again. So I've been in industry for almost 20 years, spanned across multiple industries, both in semiconductors in the high-tech space, in aerospace and defense, as well as CPG on the industrial side most recently. Throughout my career, there's been a couple themes that I've always gravitated towards. One is on M&A, the full life cycle, but more so on the integration side, and really incorporating aspects of transformation as we go through integration. There's no better time to transform a company as when you're going through an integration or you're picking up a new company and kind of learning from each other to drive better performance for the new company as it goes forward. The other theme that I've really focused on is ops strategy and ops transformation. And really what that revolves around has been about end-to-end supply chain connectivity, driving better transparency in decision making, and really focusing in on achieving targets for, let's say, the near term, but having a clear vision and marching towards that vision for the long term. And really that boils down to the S&OP process that is just so integral to a company. So essentially just focused on ops, focused on M&A, and just driving better performance for the company, creating value, enabling value. And ultimately, it just comes down to people, process, and technology, and driving improvement and transformation across all three elements.
Great. So as I teased during that introduction, we're going to talk a little bit about leading change through different market shifts. Now, unless you're living under a rock, I think a lot of people recognize that we are headed into a little bit of a change of pace. But before we dive into kind of how to prepare and lead through our current environment, I do want to take a little bit of a look back at maybe what we saw as lessons learned from the pandemic and leading through that type of change. So can you share a little bit about what that pandemic did to our decision making and leading through change?
No, I think it's a really good question, Emma, and one that I think everyone's asking themselves and their companies about and their leadership team about. And I think, first of all, COVID exposed a lot of shortcomings, and I just identified gaps to performance for a company. And I think the other aspect of that is just we learned how unprepared we were for the unpredictable. And I think from that, the lessons to be learned are just the importance of resiliency, right? So how do we be more adaptable, be more agile and react and recover from supply and demand shocks, to just name a few things, right? Certainly there's other aspects that are impacting a business, but from a supply chain perspective, it's really on both sides of the equation, how we were not able to predict changes and forecast what the future may look like and which direction the market may be heading into. But I think resiliency also means that we need to come out of it. We need to learn. We need to come out of it stronger and really focus on what I call the second lesson is the importance of deeper level scenario planning. I think throughout my career, what I've seen many companies that I've worked with, but even peers and partners that I've worked with as well, is yes, we do scenario planning, but I think in a very limited manner. And I think the function itself has not truly reached its capability or has evolved over time where we're doing that deeper level scenario planning. And what I mean by that is, yes, it's end to end, but it's also peeling back the onion, layers of that onion, which is, are you going down all the way to, as an example, the raw materials providers, right? The metal markets or whatever, the injection moldings that you need to get for your plastics business or whatever it may be. Are we going down to that level to understand what a supply and or a demand shock would do to our, let's say, sub-tier suppliers that we are working with? I think the other aspect of this is also, when we think about scenario planning, is thinking about labor, right? A lot of times we think about the material inputs that come into a business, whether it is in a manufacturing company, but I think labor also impacts how we do scenario planning. The availability of the labor, certainly looking at geopolitics and where we play, where we manufacture, where we're getting our talent from, and what is the dynamic that's happening there. Are we synthesizing and coalescing this information into scenario planning. And that's what I call deeper level scenario planning. I think this also leads us into number three, which is, how robust our processes are, or they need to be, to allow us to react faster and course correct when, let's say, black swan events like COVID occur. I think hand in hand with this is really the capability of our people to problem solve, to share amongst each other, and learn and work across functions and possible silos, right? So I think all of these three elements as lessons learned come together to just make us more agile, make us more resilient, and drive faster decision making. But it's also more cohesion across the company to make sure that decision is in fact going to lead us to success and really achieve value that we're trying to drive.
So some of those ideas, obviously, you just shared a little bit that this has helped us become more agile and drive that cohesion. But how else do you feel that some of these lessons that we've learned are impacting the way that we drive transformation and change within an organization today, kind of like in our current moment? And then we'll get to suggestions for maybe what we're about to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one leads to the other. And I think we tend to gravitate more towards the hard metrics, but really, I think it's a softer side of leadership that comes into play, and that's been highlighted over the past few years and today, which is the emphasis on empathy. Many of us, our leadership style is to lead with empathy, with direction, and I think it's just become even more important in today's environment. But I think with that comes better communications, which leads to transparency. So what I really mean by that is we understand the labor market is really tough right now. And even with the changes in the economy, the labor dynamics, looking at the BLS metrics that come out every month. But all in all, what I really think is that there has been a shift in attitudes. There has been a shift in the way we operate and what that employer-employee relationship has to be or needs to be, and really reach a common goal of, yes, driving the company's performance better, yes, entering newer markets or making new markets, but it's also doing it understanding that people have lives outside of work, and allowing people to bring their whole self to work and really bringing their talents to the benefit of the company, but also to their peers and to the community. And I think companies are, in general, recognizing that, they're adapting to it, and we're certainly seeing changes in policy, both in the private sector, but certainly in the public sector as well, and to really create that type of environment and the ecosystem that we are operating in today. I think the other thing too, in the current environment, from a leading change perspective, is driving clarity for the organization so that, again, we act as a cohesive team across the organization, right? Do we all have that common understanding of, hey, what are the problems that we're facing, right? And what are we doing about it? Or what are our options to do something about it? What is that course that we are going to follow? People want to be led regardless of what level you are in a company. And I think having and creating clarity for the broader organization is important, such that we share a similar understanding and perspective on how to think about the current environment, the current situation within a company that we are working with. And then I think lastly, it's just recognizing the need to focus and prioritize on the work that matters, right? So again, one leads to the other, having empathy, better communications, driving clarity. And then certainly with that comes the focus that's needed to prioritize on work that matters, and such that everyone is being more impactful, is enabling value, and strategically aligned with the goals and the vision that the leadership has set forth.
So now I want to shift a little bit and maybe tap into your advice for leaders. As I mentioned in that introduction, we are facing changes, whether that is the potential downshift or even like things like continuing to adapt to hybrid work or remote work. And what does that look like? We have more change happening now than ever before. So, what suggestions do you have for leaders as they are guiding their teams through transforming their organization while these market shifts are also happening to the world?
Yeah, I think everyone understands that, hey, in business, there's always going to be up cycles and down cycles. It's just a normal course of running a business, being in business. But I think it also comes down to having a vision, right? And really that vision that needs to be communicated, that needs to be understood at all levels within the company is important. And I think, again, coming out of COVID and looking forward, it highlights the fact that leadership matters. And having this vision as we go forward, we also have to recognize that resiliency, operating in a uncertain environment, unpredictable environment, let's face it, the speed of which we're doing business certainly brings on its own challenges, such as unpredictability, right? There's always going to be something that we didn't foresee, and it's going to impact our forecast for the future. That's fine. But how are we being resilient? So have the vision, but leave room to be versatile, to be agile, and don't be so dogmatic about a certain forecast or a certain goal that you may have for the future. I think you have to leave room to be nimble and be able to react, perhaps even predict, and then course correct as. And I think with this, it goes back to just deeper level scenario planning, that such that some of these, let's say, black swan events are being modeled in through the data that's available, and then certainly helping us to make better decisions and organize a team behind that. And then I think we talked about this a few minutes ago, Emma, which is through this, right? Be transparent, communicate it, and then have a plan in place, what we call change management, such that people understand it, they understand the why, and they understand what their role they're playing in affecting change and making that vision come to reality, right? Such that all of us can fall behind or come in line behind that common shared goal, that vision, and then play our own part to make that and ultimately, I think it just always comes down to three things, right? Which is focus on people, or continue to focus on your people, your processes, and then technology. Become more resilient, because ultimately, at the end of the day, everyone has a team, and we have to make sure that the team understands where we're going, and together we can get there faster, more effectively, rather than just being focused on, let's say, some bright and shiny object that may be out there or technology that may be out there, right? The people in the process themselves need to be changed, need to be transformed as we go forward, with technology as a key enabler to make that happen.
Thank you so much for joining me for the conversation, and for everybody for watching. If you're not already, make sure that you connect on LinkedIn so that you can stay up to date. And as always, let either one of us know if you've got any questions. But thank you again so much for taking the time to chat with me, and have a wonderful day, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Leading Change. If you liked what you saw, be sure to subscribe and come back weekly for more expert interviews on digital transformation, change management, and emerging technologies.